KLTV sound check, KLTV sound check.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the 9 a.m. public hearing of the BOCC. We'll lead with the flag salute if you want to raise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will, I'm sure Commissioner Mortensen reviewed the minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I did review the minutes of the activities last week and I move to approve those minutes.
Any questions on those? Seeing none, call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thank you. Consent agenda today. I'll run over it real brief. We have an extension agreement with Summit Foods. They provide food for our juvenile facility. It is raising a little bit from $2.22.5 to 2.4448. This is the last year of the extension. I think we do it for 4 years and then we send it out for bid again. So next year that'll be sent out for bid. We do have under correspondence, we have ordinance where a piece of property in Longview was annexed into Longview and is no longer in county. And that was basically by home owner request. So that was done. Retirement letter to Cindy Buchanan, who spent 23 plus years with Cowlitz County, is retiring. Then we have vouchers in the amount of $6,113,025 and 41. Any questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve today's consent agenda as presented.
It's been moved to approve. Last chance for questions. No, okay. I would call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thank you. One motion item today. We also have, boy, we're probably going to be to this quick. We have Board of Health at 10 o'clock today. So. Morning, Gina.
Good morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services. We have one item on the agenda this morning. It's an amendment to the consolidated contract with the Department of Health. This amendment is doing three things. So it is adjusting language in our current Group A scope of work. The state added a couple paragraphs about sharing information with local health jurisdictions on Group A systems. So they just added that language into our current scope of work. It's also removing unspent foundational public health services funds from last fiscal year. So it's, we're sort of reconciling what they allocated, what we spent, and they're taking the funds back that were unspent. And it's also adding the new FPHS allocation for this current fiscal year. So it's doing those three things in this amendment. The foundational public health services funding, we work with the Board of County Commissioners on how we utilize those funds. And so we'll continue those conversations with the county commissioners. We can also, if the Board of Health has recommendations or priority areas that they identify through our Board of Health meetings, we can certainly figure out how that ties into with these funds. So those are the three things that this amendment is doing, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Gina, this contract is an amendment that increases spending by about $148,000. Would I see that, read that somewhere?
Yeah, so what they did was let me get my exact numbers. They're taking out what was unspent from last year and they're adding what was spent from this year. So what you see is that increase is the difference in the allocation between those numbers. So that's where you see the increase of 100 and whatever it says, 141 or 181.
And how did the Board of Health recommend?
The Board of County Commissioners approves this contract.
What about the Board of Health? Do they not weigh in on it at all? Have they not yet?
With foundational public health services.
Public
funding.
health, yeah.
Yeah, no, the authorization lies with the Board of County Commissioners
Right.
to approve the contract and the funding. And if we can certainly take conversation to the Board of Health, if there's direction to do that.
Do you kind of work those in, maybe the Board of Health in on the type of stuff that wants to be spent on?
Yeah, so if there's,
So that's,
yeah, so if the Board of Health has different priority areas or recommendations, or they'd like to see more, activity in a certain health
Right.
area, we could potentially use some of this foundational public health services funding to address whatever is identified,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
And these are like quite a few of our programs with the state, they're reimbursement type things. Yeah.
They are well,
Yeah.
this one, the state sends the money twice a year, but it gets reconciled at the end, which is part of what you're seeing today is
Yeah.
we
If you
have
don't
to-
use it, then
yeah.
it goes back. So
then we
it's-
send it back. Yep.
Yeah.
So Gina, the whole contract, which is a multi-year contract, is something like $3.4 million.
The whole contract, let's see, including this amendment is about $4.3 million.
And that's one of the larger contracts that the department gets from the state.
Mhm.
So I kind of go back to my old question. When do we let the health board in on it? I would think that they should be getting these now. And I understand it's a new process. We've probably not been very clear, but it seems logical. A major expenditure, those priorities are set for the next, the rest of the contract year. And our citizens on the health board are cut out of the process, which I think is putting the cart before the horse.
Okay, so you're asking about the Board of Health approving
Mhm.
this contract?
Or making a recommendation. I understand law,
Yeah.
we have to make the final decision, but I hope we eventually get the processes in where we give the Board of Health an opportunity to review, to make recommendations,
Sure.
to make suggestions.
Yeah.
But we're not asking that question yet, and yet millions of dollars is being agreed to. So at least from my perspective, I think we should refer back to the Board of Health. Can we take another week to do that? I mean, we have a health meeting this afternoon or this morning.
I don't know I think the county commissioners legally sign the contract. But we can certainly talk through what that would look like.
Yeah. I kind of see it as two different deals. We got a contract from the state and we decide whether we want to accept that contract or not. And that's kind of our decision there. And if we accept it, then those funds can be spent on different things. And to me, that'd be kind of when we ask the Board of Health, do you have things that you would want for that? So I think
Mhm.
I agree with Commissioner Weber, they need to be involved. I don't know that they need to be involved in the approval of the contract with the state, but I think their voice needs to be heard on, hey, we got these kind of areas. Can some of this funds go over there? I totally agree with that.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it too.
Yeah, there's also a burden on the Board of Health. It's got to get its act together about a lot of things and that takes time. And in the meantime, life goes on. This is not a timetable you invented. This is a timetable pressed upon you.
Correct.
And typically until you know exactly what you should be doing, you proceed on
Mhm.
as before. So I'm in agreement with that. Other questions?
I think we got,
If I may,
Yeah.
you want him to go?
Go ahead.
So I get alarmed when there's language that says, sharing information was changed. Can you flesh that out?
Yes, so. So the language that changed in the Group A scope of work. So it says, there's this, it's just a couple sentences on page 3 of that particular scope of work. So it says data sharing, the Office of Drinking Water will share water system information and files with the local health jurisdiction to support the work identified in this statement of work. And then it talks about how to request that information.
Okay, that sounds like what they should have been doing all along, right?
I
Okay,
was just having that conversation with Carol.
all right. And then typically I would want to, this is maybe, we can accept the contract, but then in terms of spending there, I always want to know how we're doing. What problems do you see from the HHS side? And those are things you have to provide to the Board of Health so that we basically get a little more information on that. Maybe it doesn't need to be answered here. But it is just overall critical to anybody paying attention that we want to know what problems we're solving by the money we spend. And the answer may be very simply, we're appeasing the bureaucracy. Okay, at least most of us understand that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Go ahead.
I just have kind of a basic question. That seems like an awful lot of money we left sitting on the table. And I'm not saying you have to spend every dime that's allotted. There needs to be a reason for that. But I think involving the very people who need to use that, are they aware that that much money was left on the table? It seems to me we could have found something constructive to use that for. You know, I don't know all the particulars, you know, but just common sense tells me that that's something we could look into or have the local entity be, you know, accountable, I guess, to a certain extent, or just involved in and explain some of that. That's all.
If I may, that there's an overriding common sense that says if you can't get value out of it, don't spend it. Now that somebody else might misspend it, that's on them, but on us is just a proper use of money. And I'm actually happy that HHS is saying, for whatever reason is, we're not spending it wantonly. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
Yeah. It might not be true, but my neighbors right next to me, he's one-handed and he was married to a gal, and then both of them got ran over and died. And I don't know if that's true, but we don't have any lights on at Pacific Avenue. And I got another guy that says that we don't have any lights on Third, and Arn told me, he said, that's not our thing. And I'm thinking, what? This is a commissioner's meeting, right? We should know what our money's going for and if we can put lights up, right?
Are those within the county? Is it a city?
It's city, yeah, because I live on South Pacific.
Yeah. Well, I think the city of Kessel works in that area for that type of stuff.
Yeah, and Arn said that, but
Yeah.
I was just wondering, I was wondering.
Also, your comment should at this point pertain to the
Oh, I'm sorry.
contract amendment.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any other comments on this particular item? I would ask for the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the contract amendment with Washington State Board of Health as has been described.
Okay, we have a motion, last chance for comments.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I would move that we refer this action item to for a recommendation to our local Board of Health.
Well, I have a motion on the table we need to vote on. And then we,
Motion to refer is appropriate.
Yeah.
So have a debate or discussion on it and then proceed to
Okay.
vote on the motion to refer. Once again, as I mentioned, it seems that we're a little bit backwards. We have a locally appointed Board of Health. They've been in office for a year. We approve these contracts. There's nothing that says what our priorities are more than the budget that you approve. And when you spend the money, that's the priorities that we spend it on. So it just seems to me only appropriate that we honor those citizen volunteers who are working with us on the health board with a referral of one of the major contracts for their recommendation. It ultimately will come back to us. That's kind of the way the system is. We're all on that board also, but the state wants to hear from citizens on that. Plus, both of them are in public meetings, so we do hear from citizens in a number of different ways. But we've been struggling on that health board, when getting our act together, so to speak. And it seems to me, this is one important way to say to the health board, here are the things we want you to begin considering and have those discussions on where we should be spending the money, what we're spending it on, why we're not spending enough, all those kinds of discussions that we're having today, which is all very appropriate, but it also should happen at our health board. Otherwise, why even have a health board?
Mr. Chairman, this is not a question of honoring or dishonoring the members of the board. It is a practical issue. And one way you know it's a practical issue is because regardless, at the end of the day, this contract will be approved by the board. And the details of how the money gets spent has been discussed. It seems like the chairman and I and my colleague are all interested in making sure that Board of Health actually partakes in determining these issues. But at this point, it's kind of a moot issue, and trying to force something before it's time generally gives you a bad result. So I would speak against that motion.
any other comments? Okay, we have a motion to defer. I would call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
I would also oppose. Go back to the motion to approve. Any comments on that? I would call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Motion carries. Okay. That's the motion items we had today. Thank you, Gina. Appreciate it. We'll open it up to public comments. I haven't been around the last 2 weeks. Do you guys have anything that follow up that you might want to share with the audience on anything?
I'm looking at Kelly.
The only update that I have is nominations for excellence of services due this Friday by 5 p.m. So we could get that out to the directors and the elected officials to get those in. Thank you.
I will mention right before we open up public comments is tomorrow in our 1:30 work session. We're talking again about the mental health tax. Superior Court, the drug court and juvenile will be in and we'll be chatting with them about that. If over the last, I don't know how many weeks, few weeks, we've had different departments in to kind of talk how they use that. And so tomorrow, Superior Court will be in. If you have an interest in that, 1:30, they'll be here and discuss some of that.
And I think that's on the agenda for the Board of Health, which is appropriate.
Yeah.
in keeping with what you were asking.
We'll open up to public comments.
Good morning, commissioners. Want to make sure my microphone is on. Apparently it is. First, I want to apologize for my attire. I didn't dress myself this morning. My granddaughter did because this afternoon I'm taking 24 kids to Portland Zoo. And I wanted to be visible in case I need immediate medical aid or some such. So please, it's not in disrespect that I'm
Yeah.
dressed this way.
And we were holding that against you.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's lots of reason to hold a lot of stuff against me, this being one of them, but I just want to blame my grandkids, so I'm sorry. Gentlemen, you recently heard a presentation by the city of Kelso regarding a new facility which the city intends to apply for funding for. CAP is involved in this and they're going to take the lead on the search for funding. The location of this site is at Catlin and May. I'm not here as a counselor for Kelso. I'm here as a spokesperson for Sons of Norway, which I'm a proud member, and also Kelso Senior Association and the neighborhood of West Kelso. That's who I'm speaking for today, not the city of Kelso. The information that you were provided about this proposed facility, nobody opposes the function of this facility, which is low-cost housing, location of a new public library for the city of Kelso, and a community center space. What everyone objects to, and you were not made aware of, is the opposition level to the siting of this facility. I'm not sure because I haven't been told, and I'll reference myself as a counselor, whether we're going to have 24 low-cost apartments in this facility or we're going to have 40 apartments in this low-cost facility. And we desperately need the low-cost housing. There isn't a community in the United States that doesn't need low-cost housing. But the fact of the matter is, it comes down to 49 parking spaces. As I understand it, and I've asked for clarification of this, for let's say only 20 low-cost apartment units, a public library, and a community center, there will be 49 parking spaces available. That makes no sense. The sentiment of the organizations that oppose this siting is that the public library needs to be on the east side of the river. And there's a logistical reason for that. Accessibility. If you're familiar with that area in West Kelso where this site is proposed, think about how people are going to access this facility. I'm asking you folks to take a look at what it is in terms of ramifications for West Kelso, for the organizations that are involved, parking, the citizens. It just, frankly, it concerns me that you're going to be asked to support this program without you understanding there is strong opposition in the community about the siting. On Friday, the 28th, that's this coming Friday at 10 a.m., we're having an interested parties meeting at the Kelso Civic Center, also known as the Kelso Senior Association Center. It's at 10 a.m. We're asking you not to come as BOCC, but as individuals who are interested in exploring and hearing what the opposition has to say about this facility. I'm not condemning my council or my city. I'm saying we have a strong argument to be made, and before we seek money for this facility, we need to explore alternative siting. That's going to be a nightmare. Millions were spent to realign West Main in that area down there. This thing is a monstrosity. And that's the only way I can describe it, for the disruption it's going to cause. 49 parking spaces. Please, I'm not asking anything more than come and listen to what the opposition has to say. You've heard the Kelso presentation. Gentlemen, I thank you. Yeah, I'll take
But-
questions.
Where'd you say that Friday was at again?
It's going to be at the Kelso Civic Center, better known as the Kelso Senior Association Center, on 8th Street in Kelso, 10 a.m.
Okay.
A question? Is the only citing concern based on the number of parking spaces?
Absolutely.
So there is nothing else hidden somewhere?
Absolutely not the case that, that parking alone is the issue. The other issue is that Catlin Hall, the Senior Association and the 21 organizations that utilize Catlin Hall have asked the city for a sum of money to refurbish the building. It needs new siding, it needs new roofing. It serves 21 organizations at present. And the city anticipates having a competitive facility in this new complex of 2 buildings that they want to build. It seems ridiculous to me that so many groups and organizations utilize what we have now and won't be accommodated in the new facility, that this is not taken into consideration in the planning process. Granted, I'm all for all things community, but we have an excellent facility at Catlin. It's been there for 100 years. It's meaningful. A lot of you folks know its history, what it was before. Some of you, I'm sorry.
So if I could translate your answer is, yes, it's only the spaces, but actually it's not, because we have a good building with a little extra money. We can restore it to good condition, and it provides a service for a lot of people. So you don't want to see that going away in one form or another.
Thank you for clarifying my answer. And let me say this, the money that's utilized comes from ARPA. That was our tax dollars being returned to this community for use by this community. This is not a new funding program whatsoever. The money is sitting there in the bank to rehab Catlin Hall. And it's our tax dollars being returned to the community. So that's all the citizens of the community, and it's not just Kelsoans. Organizations from throughout the county utilize that facility, not to mention private individuals and parties and other things. Okay, so we're just asking for the funds to rehab it, but we don't want a competitive.
Right. I'm a little confused because the timing, you make it sound like this is something will come before us in the future. It came before us in the past. And we all three agreed to throw in $695,000 towards that center. And I'll grant you that we don't ever get the full story ahead of time. So I will have to count on my colleagues to help me figure out what the right thing is to do going forward. But I assumed you know that we had already allocated and blessed that project.
I would also like you to know that I, as a council member, was unaware that any presentation was going to be made to this BOCC, nor did any of the organizations in opposition know that that presentation was going to happen. Gentlemen, we're not suggesting anything change other than please come and listen and understand what the argument is. That's all we ask.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Jim.
On the other side of that same coin you opened up at the end, do other people know that you're here? Does the other side that made the presentation, do they know that you're here today?
They have been made very aware of my opposition to where the city stands. And if
Right.
they
but-
don't care to come to your meeting, that's on them. That's not on me. I don't have to notify them because I'm making a public statement as a citizen, not as a counselor. I'm making a public statement as a spokesperson for Sons of Norway, for Kelso Senior Association, and the citizens of West Kelso.
All right, I will say that your last concern that you weren't notified is a two-way street.
I'm not going to argue the point. The fact of the matter is that a presentation of such significance should have included individual organizations and groups who have expressed their in council session concerns about this facility. There was no effort made to notify those organizations.
If the gentlemen are in agreement with me, I'd like to hear how much the refurbishing costs are.
Absolutely. And I'm going to make a statement about the health department. Is Gina still in the room?
Yeah.
All right. The city of Kelso designated the council by sentiment vote, let's call it, designating $600,000 for the refurbishment of Catlin Hall. We have approximately $3.5 million in ARPA funds available to us for community use. Certainly Catlin is a community facility owned by the city of Kelso and designated for use by the citizens of Kelso and others, qualifies for that funding. We were, as a council and as individual organizations who utilize Catlin, told that the cost would be $600,000. A roof, we have estimates for $50,000, ranging from $47,000 to $50,000 for a complete roof, and $230,000 at a maximum for siding for the facility, which is needed, and an additional $100,000 potentially for dry rot and other sorts of problems. So we're not even approaching the $600,000 that people keep talking about. The second thing is, it suddenly comes up at our last council meeting, and again, as a private citizen, not as a counselor, that there was going to be an asbestos issue in Catlin. And that the potential cost to the city might be something over $1 million. In point of fact, no testing of any sort, to my knowledge, has ever been conducted there. The sentiment of the city seems to be, and again, speaking strictly as a private citizen and concerned person at that, the city seems to want to elevate the cost of rehabbing Catlin to a point where it's unacceptable. And those monies that were designated by the city be in fact put towards the new facility. We have no objection to the new facility or its purpose or anything else. Our only objection is, in point of fact, its site. So $600,000 is an overestimate in my opinion. And we've got quotes on the roof to show you. Not only that, we just honestly don't believe that there is going to be any cost in terms of substructure of that building that is going to exceed more than $50,000, $60,000. There just does not appear to be dry rot. In one other thing, we have a group out of Olympia that's going to be putting into that facility, if we can make it through council, a new heating system that will come to us cost-free, literally cost-free. It amazes me that we have this money in the bank. We have a need for the facility. Why are we reinventing the wheel here? in spending the extra money on this facility when we've got a perfectly good facility. It's actually beloved. There's a lot of history there, folks. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. But this is something you needed to be aware of.
Yeah. Well, and we appreciate this. I know a lot of what you're talking about is council decisions that they need to make, but I agree with you that it's nice to have all the information, which we don't always get. So,
Some of us elected
Right.
don't always get it.
yeah. We appreciate you coming by. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
And I just I'm a big church hopper. So, and every year, some of my churches say, well, this is how much we got, this is how it is. And, I don't know even if you guys even do that, because I'm thinking we have like a couple $1 million, because you said that there's 1% out of $4.5 trillion. That's just overwhelming, you know, that's more than I can even discuss mathematically, you know. Thanks.
You know,
I don't know.
it sounds like you're talking about budget type things, and we do look
I'm-
at budget stuff all the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In fact, Kathy that takes control of that, actually very good at it. And
Well, we have some money, don't we? We have enough to refurbish Catlin and put lights on Pacific Avenue and stuff like that, maybe? Or not?
well, we just heard that Kelso has set aside some money to refurbish Catlin. That's a Kelso project.
Yeah, maybe I could get some lights on Pacific Avenue too also, because of what happened. It seems like it's like a long time ago, but still it did happen, and we don't have any lights there now.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Regarding the lights on Pacific Avenue,
South Pacific
it
Avenue.
seems to me there are some islands of unincorporated South Kelso. They're not inside the city. That would be under county jurisdiction. So depends on the address and the specific location as to whether it's within the county's jurisdiction. So we need to find that out. If you can, you
Yeah.
know, send us a note or something where it would be. So
Yeah,
if it's
it's
right down
4
this
blocks,
street, then,
5 blocks down this way.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's in the city of Kelso. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's gonna be an issue that they have to work out.
Oh, okay.
If
Thank
it's, you know, if it's in unincorporated area, then yeah,
Yeah.
that's our responsibility.
And
to
I'm thinking
administer
maybe
that.
we have enough money for that, don't we?
I'm sure Olympia has plenty of money that they can spend.
Well, I'm thinking so too, maybe, but.
Any other comments? Okay, we have Board of Health at 11. This one we can adjourn, and then at 10, I'm sorry, at 10, reading the clock wrong. Thanks, Lindy. Board of Health at 10, so we will adjourn this and reconvene at 10 for Board of Health. Thank you.
Really? Yeah.
Hey, sir.
Try and be there. Very articulate, almost very ambitious. Starting.
Ah.
Well, thank you. I wish you my final voice. That's what they call Listen, blame my granddaughter. Not my fault. I got 44 kids to herd to consume.
When you said that, I.
It's amazing how grandpas get trapped. And when I looked around with grandma, you know, where the hell's everybody out there? I'm out. Me, speak on to is also.
Still in 1 year. And it comes out. Rock.
Hi. How are you doing? Hey, Lynn. No, my house. Actually, I do think it's like a lot of. Yeah. Some of that. Oh. Well, I can get it. But it's one thing I want to have. So that's.
But it has to be.
See you later.
I mean, that's. I go to, I live in Castle. And I go to Longview. Oh. Yeah.
Because I burned up.
Oh, back to
Yeah.
We got 50 more compounds. $1 million.
There's a beach. Where they. That may be what I'm wondering. But I've been out of touch with. I don't think it's small.
You know, like 50 hours. Now 50 hours.
I would not be surprised. Yeah, and they're gonna talk about that. Longview City Council. Yeah. I know Larry is going. They've been looking over that. So they're. You ought to come. I'm gonna go visit here.
I would like. I would. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we need that.
Thank you.
You take care.
Yeah. Oh, good. Resorts.
Hey, Rick. That's right. It's like there? Oh, I thought you had a different fire. Oh, I got lots. Oh, you got lots. Hey, I'm just wondering. It's really unique. I would like to know. Because we're doing 1% now, right? 1%. And I'm thinking, what? We've got $4.5 trillion items, $4.5 trillion raising taxes. And it's in.
That's, sounds like, I don't know what, have you been to the city? Council?
Actually, I didn't know that. Where's it at?
Oh, they're right down in City Hall by the police department. It's right there.
It's every Wednesday.
They do Tuesdays. I think it's a-
That was a fun
or
show.
something like that.
Tuesdays in person.
I'll quote you one. I know it's Scooby. I try to use those.
Cause I have to go to.
Well, if you're talking about lights in particular areas, Kelsey, they're the ones.
I'm gonna talk to Andy, but you know what, another thing is.
Well, you can talk to Andy.
But what happens is, like I said, by church, every year they say how much the budget is and how much everything is and you guys don't.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
The facts on this started. Yeah, she gives the budget. Periodically, she'll come in. He doesn't usually do it on the public meeting. Wednesday or a meeting that is passed. Whatever.
Thank you, thank you. I don't.
They're kind of deep. I had. That's from sentences. That's been.
What kind of meetings going on?
Board of Health. Well, you can, if you want to listen, consider it public. But I don't know. If I should. I'm pretty You're good.
Thank you so much.
Some people, or some people, it is the absolute.
You know, this all started when they started. Girls got the idea. Yeah, my friend had one. Yeah, that's good. Flower decal. That's a cute little star. I can't go into all this. I'm gonna help you. Yeah, Thursday, Friday. Oh, nice. I wonder if it's outside. Probably. In the and a huge spot. Yeah. Oh. Fine. You want- You need one like family. You don't get it. Yeah. Pirate thing. Bucks and like. Ravens. Yeah, there was the. Means. It's like one. Body art stuff. Body stars, all stuff.
Good morning, everybody. This is the Board of Health meeting starting at 10 o'clock on time. A local Board of Health can have many issues to consider. I've heard some folks think that guns and firearms should be a concern of the Board of Health. I personally don't agree. One Board of Health in another county in Washington believes that climate change should be their main focus. Again, I disagree. With so many concerns out there, I believe that child sex trafficking and human trafficking in general are a current major concern. There are more people in slavery today than there were when slavery was legal. According to a report I read, 3.3 million children are enslaved. I urge everyone to watch a new movie based on a true story called The Sound of Freedom. And with that, I move into old business about the minutes. We have some minutes and I'd entertain a motion to accept the minutes. Did everybody get the minutes this time? Yeah, everybody have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes,
I'd entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I move we adopt the minutes or approve the minutes, I should say.
Is there any discussion on the minutes today? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to accept the minutes from the June 27th meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? So it passes unanimously. Great. Okay, moving on to I want to keep this to within our 1 hour time frame. So sorry if I'm going fast here. The HHS website, I worked with Gina and Carol on correcting some of the problems with that. And I'd just like to ask if anybody has found any other errors? No?
Excuse me, I have not, but could you kind of give a little summation of what changes you guys made?
Let's see. We updated the meetings to now they show monthly meetings instead of quarterly. Trying to remember. The Board of Health on the page for the advisory boards was moved around a little bit. If you, so I'd like to just thank Carol and Gina for your work on doing that. That helped a lot. It was fast and I really appreciate your help on that. So that's just an update. If anybody does find any issues with the website, to please let us know. Moving on to the mental health tax. This board needs to make a vote or take a vote for a recommendation to forward on to the commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners, whether to uphold or continue the tax or to let the tax sunset as it's written. So I'd just like to open that up for discussion.
You know, my thoughts on that and I would personally as myself, it doesn't bother me if you want to ask the board to make that recommendation, but at some point in time as a commissioner, I need to make that decision and I would probably abstain at this time because I'm still trying to formulate opinion and thoughts on where we want to go with this. And I haven't heard from everybody. I know we have Superior Court in tomorrow. So I'm just talking about myself, Kelly. I'm still formulating where I'm at. If the board wants to, this board wants to make a recommendation, I'm fine with that. I'm just telling you, I'd probably abstain from voting one way or the other at this point in time.
You know, I'd like to agree with Mr. Dahl. I think it's smart to wait a little longer. I know they're going to be speaking tomorrow at 1:30 about the drug court, and I am interested in hearing what they have to say. And so I feel like it might be a bit premature just in my own opinion. Thank you.
Uh, I think those are good stances. I will add that we sometimes think of things as being all or none. And with this tax, nothing prevents us from reinstating it if we decide at some point to let it lapse. I don't think we have much. There's some hysteresis, a little bit of time, but I think it's on the order of like half a year at most or something before we can institute it again. It's quarter boundaries. I think Gina probably knows what we're constrained to. But anyhow, so it may be less traumatic or we need not be as careful in one way as we think we might need to be, or we might have thought.
So I think I'm kind of hearing that it's a little premature. Maybe we should put this off, table this idea until later on, after you say the drug court's coming next week, and I think.
Yeah,
more-
you wouldn't
or tomorrow.
table it, you would just move on to the next item
Yeah,
on your
that's
agenda.
right, because it's not a motion. So yeah, we'll just move on to that if anybody, unless anybody has an objection.
I guess my one thought is that I have watched on my computer a number of the presentations, but when it comes time for the board to make a decision, it feels like we need a little presentation prior to making a recommendation, just so that we have a sense, and whoever happens to be watching our meeting have a sense of how much funds, where it's going. And I know we have seen that in the past, but I think it is, it behooves us to be very careful and make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about. So that would be my request, is that prior to us making, when that shows up on the agenda again, that we do have a little presentation from staff.
I think what you might be asking, which is, I think, appropriate, is that you really would request the Board of County Commissioners not to take action until this board can give a recommendation, and that recommendation would happen next month, probably then, at the next meeting.
With a presentation, with some kind of a
Yeah.
presentation. There's been hours and hours of videos that that Gina and Carol have sent us. Is there I don't know if it would be asking too much to make a 5 or 10 minute, maybe more of a public presentation of the highlights?
Well, and I think I'm looking for an overall view, like of the whole program, and not the specifics of each individual program, which has been presented to us over the course of the last several months, but an overall presentation is kind of my thought.
Yeah, I think to help us on that, I would want to see priorities. For example, I would structure something that says, let's assume we don't renew the tax. How are we going to fund these 6 other things? And that would give you a number. And if you prioritize those 6 other things, you would then say, okay, I can survive without the tax, or I can't survive without the tax, but it's really hard to see otherwise.
I like that idea too. Is that something that you folks can help us with? Just the kind of the highlight reel, I guess, would be something like that. Cause I watched several of those videos, and there's some key points, but it's hours and hours.
Well, I think a good point is made that what programs are going to go away? What kind of services are going to go away if the tax is eliminated or is not renewed? And I would be interested in that information.
Yeah, I
And
think
how
we're
they're
on the
working.
same there. It's the priority, you know. Yeah.
It would be useful, I think, if we had a bit of a historical perspective to see how the allocations have changed over the years. We originally had it divided into 3 nice pieces of pie. And it's not that way at all anymore. It's and for good reasons, but there are some pretty core costs that are gonna have to be covered one way or the other, and then others are more optional. But I think most of the optional ones we've already eliminated because
The problem with that is it's a good thing, but I'm looking at it very much as an empiricist. Things have not improved regardless of how much we spend. So looking at history, we continue to spend and we still have the same problems is going to be prejudicial. I don't mean it quite in the word of prejudicial, but it'll indicate that we aren't quite on the right track.
Yeah, I'd like to see some quantitative answers if the system's working or not. Would be interesting to see how many people have graduated and.
Well, the key on stuff like that isn't, to me, graduation. It's a 5-year hence thereafter history.
Yeah.
Are we just slowing down the revolving door? That's what you're getting at, right?
Right. Yeah. It's that, and it's also, it's hard because our laws on drugs and our mores on drugs have changed, and is the continued pressure on our legal system means things, responses before may not be what we do today. So, yeah.
Any further comments on that? We'll push that off until later. And I thank the board for all their comments on that. Moving on to new business. If you guys would like to come up, you're welcome to come up to HHS. I don't think there's much, there might be a few questions coming for you. Sorry, did you get you were comfortable over there? So the next item, there's a conference, another Board of Health training conference from NAL Board of Health. Can you tell me what that acronym is? NALBOH?
Sure. You know, I asked to have this put on the agenda. It is the National Association of Local Boards of Health.
That's it.
So it's an annual conference that nobody remembers the last time it was actually in the Pacific Northwest. So it's a national organization. And I was looking at the WASAC site, the State Association for Counties, and this was listed. I'm saying, well, I hadn't heard anything about it, but we have to make any approval. If there's any interest in anybody going, it's in Tacoma.
Yeah, I just open it up for discussion. So we have a new travel policy. So if anybody is going to go, we have to approve it for the board here today. And I want to see if, well, what anybody has to say about the conference.
I haven't seen the agenda. Is there an agenda available or can you guys talk about what the conference will cover?
I have the agenda printed.
Also say, I think that the conference is later this week or early
it's this
next
week?
week.
Sunday,
Oh,
Like,
Sunday through
Very
Tuesday, I
soon.
think, something like that.
Is it?
And the
No, I
agenda,
think Tuesday starts Tuesday, I think. Tuesday, August 1st. At least that's what it says.
Okay.
I did find out that it will cost the county over $1,000 for 2 nights to do it. I'll just read a couple things just so it's publicly known on the agenda that I just kind of circled that caught my eye. One thing is that the beginning part of where is it here? Oh, the orientating new local Board of Health members is by Jamie Bodden. She is the director for the other health official, Washington State Association of Local Public Health Officials. And so she did the training that Lindy and Mary Jane and I attended in Spokane and also again in Blaine a couple months ago. To me, it looks like a repeat. That part's kind of a repeat of the same information being given. And then I see other things they're talking about: health equity, environmental justice, advocacy in advancing health equity. I'm sorry, I'm watching Commissioner Mortensen's face when I read these. Staying one step ahead of nicotine fads and cultural practices. This is not everything. This is just the things that kind of caught my eye. Advancing the agency, meaning the local board of health, advancing the agency benefits the whole of everybody. And then another one that caught my eye, which is also related to our agenda today, is STDs or STIs, investigations, a new role for public health departments, for public health to investigate STDs. These are just some of the topics there. Anybody like to talk about them, or?
Are you interested in going?
Because of the things, environmental justice doesn't really inspire me much. And because it's Tacoma, and because I just went to the last training a couple months ago, I'm not personally interested in going. I know you were thinking about it. Is anybody else maybe interested in attending it?
The time frame is not,
Yeah.
you
Uh,
know, get notified of it a week before you go.
The timeframe we're talking would exclude myself.
Actually, Mary Jane's comment brings something that's kind of on my mind. How early did we know about this, and how early did you send email to the board? No, I'm categorically against going to these things because I've been to too many in my life, and anytime I zoom in on anything, I feel like I need narcotics in order to dull the pain of the low yield in there. But I didn't explore it much. You hit a couple of words that already bias me against that, but should people, did you send us out an email?
I think Commissioner Weber brought it to our
Just about
attention.
a week ago. wasn't it?
Week
Yeah.
or two,
Yes, it
less than
wasn't
2
very
weeks
long
ago.
Okay, so that's a little bit on each of us as to whether we saw it or not. It's our responsibility. Okay.
That's fine. We can go on. We don't have to go. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Oh, so. Would there be an opportunity for someone to come and speak to us about some of those issues that we haven't dealt with much? And rather than us go to them, is there someone that could come to us?
That's a good point. I put a note, you just reminded me of, can we ask Carol and Gina to get the materials from the conference, even though we don't go?
Or have the regional health officer who I'd like to meet come and
Well,
give us a
That's
talk?
coming. Hold on.
Oh, is that? Oh,
And we could reach out and see if we can get the materials afterwards. I don't know how that works with the national associations. But I can reach out to Jamie Bodden and find out if those materials are available afterwards.
Or what about one of our staff people? One of you guys?
I don't think I've ever found HHS to be behind understanding the changes in WAC or in the RCWs. If we counted on that being gleaned out of the conferences, then we're in trouble.
oh, God.
So for me, the reasons to attend a conference are to try and understand the some of the ancillary stuff around decisions, or to kind of do a networking, trying to figure out who the players are. There are always these discussions about this or that, and I don't see us being players in that.
So I think if we can, I just ask you if you could, to reach out to Jamie and see if we can get at least the materials that we can review later on and see if there's something in there that might be of use.
Again, I'm not even sure. Typically, that's going to involve a fee of some kind. These conferences kind of build themselves, and I don't see any value in this at the moment. So if it's $1 or $1,000 to me, it's just the idea. Is it worth it? And the answer is, you got to convince me it is.
And it's funny you said that too, because also I kind of noticed on this is there's an exhibitor setup, which was not at the other conferences. So they have exhibitors paying to be at this, like a show, and selling their wares or what are their services. I don't know who they are, but I thought that was kind of interesting. So as long as we can try and get the materials, if they're free, and that would be nice. So if nobody has an objection to that, we'll just move on from that one since, yeah, it's coming up. Mary Jane wanted us to put STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, on the agenda. So Mary Jane?
So as we've been meeting for a year at this point in time, and I guess I'm kind of curious about what our local public health concerns are from a staff perspective and what real issues we're dealing with. And as I look down the list of what public health issues are, it appears to me that STDs are important. And I believe you sent an email out to us with some information. And our STD rate is not moving it, or maybe it has moved in the right direction, but it's substantially higher than Washington State. So I thought it would be important for this board to be educated on an important public health issue.
Did you get it? Did everybody get the presentation?
Yep.
Did everybody get the chance to review it?
I hesitate to say I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
There was a presentation sent out, Kelly sent it out this last Friday, but it's an old presentation from 2021, 2022. It's 2021, I think.
It's 2022. It was last April. We presented it
Yeah.
to the Board of Health.
Your health.
And so it was redistributed again
Because we haven't
last
seen it,
Friday.
is my understanding. I don't remember seeing it before. It was before our time, I think.
Yeah, it was to the previous Board of Health.
It was before, yeah, we were here. Yeah, I remember the health officer. Is that where Mr.
It's when
Krager,
we,
Dr. Krager? came?
you gave it to us when all three of us met with them for the first time, I believe.
Oh,
That was the
I think it was
report.
something they'd already presented.
What else did you want to talk about it some more?
I guess my whole reason was so that we could all be educated on what the data is in our community, how big of an issue is, what we're doing about it. Are the numbers going in the right way or the wrong way? And also bring the public as a part of the conversation, because in my limited view of what public health issues are, STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, are a public health issue. So I was hoping for a full-blown
Overview.
presentations for not just your benefit and not for the folks who've seen it before, but for the public and for all of us to see the presentation, be walked through it. Maybe that's too big of an ask. I don't know, Kelly, are we pushed for time?
Yeah, we are pushed for
Okay.
time. We have a short 1 hour meeting. If you want, I can give you the analysis page here.
Well, could we,
I got that.
could they come back next month and just,
I'm sorry, say that.
could they
again.
come back next month from HHS and give us an overview?
Sure, but I did reach out probably 3 weeks ago and asked if this was put on the agenda. So I was hopeful that we would be able to have time to have a group conversation and a group education about a public health issue.
Yeah, actually, I agree with you on that. It's the kind of thing where I don't think much legislation or even mandates from HHS can help, but the exposure to the fact that there is a problem and alerting people. it has to be repeated. I think we should probably have a comment to that effect almost every meeting. I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. Put it in people's face.
Well, my vision was that every month we could cover one of the topics that you guys wrestle with on a regular basis as part of public health. And I started with STDs because it seemed a fairly straightforward issue, but there's a number of issues that Cowlitz County wrestles with. And if we tackle one of these a month with a public slideshow presentation, that brings everybody up to speed about what the real public health issues in our community are, what we're facing, what you guys wrestle with on a daily and weekly basis with your budgets.
I agree, Mary Jane. I think you're right.
Is that something the board would like to see as a monthly presentation on a certain topic?
Makes good sense.
And it wouldn't necessarily have to be HHS that does it. They could bring in someone that has the expertise.
Except for with the exception of I want our data. I
Oh,
want Cowlitz
absolutely.
County's data.
Oh, yeah.
And
No,
not
Cowlitz County.
generic data.
Sure.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. And I'm sitting here making a list and now we have 3 things for next month's agenda. So we'll have to talk about next month.
And there's already a couple already on there. So yeah, it have to be brief because we're in this short time slot. Well, since you wanted to discuss it publicly, I will just say that the presentation talked about all kinds of different STDs and STIs, which is the same thing, sexually transmitted infections. And the analysis, at least on the one page, is saying that funding reductions for state and local STIs programs, that was a cause of them. I personally disagree with that. It says a second potential cause is a rise in riskier sexual behaviors, such as decreased condom use among vulnerable groups, including young people. And I wonder if this is something that they're teaching in the schools. And then a third potential cause was found to be drug use, poverty, and the homeless, unstable housing. So that's the analysis of that thing. We can go back into detail, I guess, on it next month.
So that was my question. Thank you for that little update, but I guess I'm looking for information directly from you guys because you guys are in the trenches. And so we can look forward to that next month.
Mary Jane, this came from their presentation. I didn't make this up.
I know, and I appreciate that. But I'm looking for their horror stories and their success stories and what seems to work for our community and what doesn't work for our community and what's being done and what funding looks like and what the future looks like. It's hard to have to wrestle to get a educational presentation before the Board of Health. And so that's all I'm asking for, is that we educate everybody at the same time. We have a slideshow. Everybody, including people who are Zooming in, can have a better understanding of what our STDs are, situations, instead of a 5-bullet conversation, which I do appreciate you giving us a quick little overview. But that's kind of what I've been looking for with each of the topics that you guys have on your daily to-do list.
Okay, any further discussion on STDs or the presentation?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to ask this, but it deals with, can we take a little time right now to define things a little bit? So for example, we could pretend that there is a chart up there that says this STD has this number and so forth on it. And oftentimes I'm presented with a lot of numbers, but I don't know how serious something might be or not be. There's the infections, the R factor on diseases of sorts, and numbers without context kind of make me a little bit nervous. Give you an idea, there's a big difference between having smallpox and having chlamydia. I got excited. And so, I don't know how to ask it precisely, but at the bottom line, maybe try something outlandish. Poisoning by plutonium is very significant for the one individual if it happens, but we don't have it in the county. So that'll help us focus on what the problem is and what we might do about the problem.
And I guess I'll add to that is that why do we care? Why is it a public health issue? So those are kinds of the questions that I think that I personally, and hopefully the Board of Health is curious about, what needs to learn about.
Yeah, exactly.
So do we actually have a body of data that can identify the public health problems being faced by Cowlitz County residents? And the reason I ask that, it seemed to me maybe a year ago at budget time, one of the requests from the department was for somebody to do that kind of data search, to come up with the numbers. Otherwise, the state says, we think this, you need to spend this much money to address that issue. And we don't have any scientific approach that I know of that identifies it. For some of us, it's conversations with neighbors or headlines in the newspaper that defines the issue. And that's, I would think a Board of Health would have a little bit a better chance of authenticity if we had data.
So currently we have a contracted epidemiologist. So this person kind of crunches data for us on an as needed basis. So for instance, a year ago, we wanted to look at our STD rates in the county, and we tasked her with digging into the data and finding that information for us. So she's got a very limited scope, a very small contract. We just tag her when we need it. We had entertained with the board last year, the Board of Commissioners, the idea of hiring someone full-time to do that. One of the things that individual could do is do a community health assessment. So and a community health improvement plan, really reaching out to the community, working with community members, physicians, et cetera, to really dig into what the people see are the health problems, what drives them to be healthy or not healthy. That's something that we don't have any capacity to do that big of a project, but that is one of the things that our foundational public health services dollars could do would be to hire a person to do that work. Ideally, it would be amazing to have a dashboard that at any time we could go look at it and know what X, Y, and Z are today, whether that's data related to food inspections or foodborne illness outbreaks or data related to STDs or any of those factors. It would be great to be able to have them at our fingertips, but currently it's on an as needed ad hoc basis. If we want to look into it, then we task her with looking for that information.
So you're kind of operating in the blind.
More or less. I mean, we see issues from our daily work and we task our priorities that way, but it's been 12 years since we did a large community health assessment or community health improvement project to really go out into the community and speak with people to know what they see are the biggest health issues for them.
Does Peace Health or Kaiser have that kind of data? Because it seems like Peace Health had a community health assessment a couple of years ago, and maybe that's too dated right now to be any good.
They are required to do that, I think, for their CMS or accreditation requirements. I think they do one every 2 or 3 years. It's less data. It's very high level, less, I don't know how to explain. I've read them. Any thoughts? Do you know how to explain that? Yeah, it's very high level. I think it just says, we know that food security is an issue, homelessness is an issue, which we know those things.
Right.
It doesn't really dive down into the nitty gritty of what those things mean and what the data looks like underneath.
And then when you did the health survey a few years ago, it was quite thick. What did you folks do with that health study once you did it?
To be honest, I wasn't terribly involved in it at the time, but I know that there are a lot of community entities that really use that to shape their priorities and what they were going to focus on. I think one of the priorities of the the CHIP was what it was called, was Healthy Starts for All. So really focused on healthy starts for children, youth, infants, because that's where it all starts. So I know that that was a big thing, and I think it helped rally the community in some ways. But
Well, in the last several years, we've had Pathways 2020 did an awful lot to try to identify community needs and publicize it. If I remember correctly, it was childhood immunizations was sort of the big #1 goal that they made some progress with. And none of the rest of the issues we made much headway on, if I remember correctly.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Did that CHIP report help shape your funding and your priorities?
I'm going
As
to
a
be
health
honest and
department?
say that I wasn't
Oh, okay.
in leadership at the time, so I
Yeah.
don't honestly know. Gina might have a little more.
Well, I'll just add that we had that big report done, and that was before my time. And I think that there was some efforts that came out of that. I know there was a lot of work around helping to start school gardens, for example. There was some of those types of efforts, but over time, we used to have a sort of a subsection in our department called Healthy Communities. And that's where that work was driven out of. And as we had turnover with those staff, we didn't get permission to refill those positions. And so some of that work
Right.
has dropped off. Yeah.
I'm an empiricist at heart. I come up with a model, then I look at the data, and if the data destroys the model, so be it. A lot of people they have a theory and they try to bend the data around the model. I don't work that way. I take a look at stuff, and if I don't see something beneficial out of it, I will speak. I spent some enjoyable time with our epidemiologist, Hoskins.
Hoskins.
Yeah, and I think she's quite competent, quite knows her stuff, pleasant. And we spent a fair amount on her, and I don't think we got any value out of it. By value, it's not that she produced nonsense, but we don't know what to do with the data or what that implies we should do. And when I think about these community assessment and all that, including Pathways 2020, I sat in there a bit, and I'm like, did we learn anything? Did it stop anything? Did we have the means? We're in a battle to win the minds of people, and we don't seem to know how to do that. We had drunk driving laws for years, and it was until Mothers Against Drunk Drivers came in and changed the attitude of people and swayed it. We've known it's a problem all along. I don't want us to go and pretend that by hiring an epidemiologist, we're going to solve any problems at all, because I don't think we do. And to the extent that what we need, I think, is that should be supplied by the health officer. We pay the health officer to do something a bit more along the lines of what I would call health trends. We're down in the daily work. The health officer should be looking broadly until there is something that just rises up, like an epidemic of polio or tuberculosis or something like that. So I don't think we're quite on the right track. I'm with Mary Jane and others. We really want these presentations. We really want to all start from the same base there. And I will always try and bias those as to what problem are we solving and how much success did we have? How much does it cost us and how much did it benefit us?
So does the health department interface with local physicians outside of our health officers, like the docs at Kaiser or the leadership at Kaiser or Peace Health, so that even anecdotally, there's information out there?
Our interactions are more in the clinical field. So like our communicable disease staff interact on a daily basis with providers in the community on communicable disease matters or children with special healthcare needs. But from a higher level, like I don't interact with physicians. Dr. Krager does, on and off. It depends on the topic. I know there's been times where one of the things we would like to start that Dr. Vines did years ago was have the health officer participate in grand rounds at the hospital and go do a presentation on tuberculosis or things that perhaps they don't see every day, but they should have a better awareness of, those types of things.
Because it does seem like that those are the folks who are seeing what kinds of situations and what kinds of health issues are occurring in our community. And I guess Family Health Center as well, in terms of they are seeing lots of STDs or obesity or premature birth weights, or I don't know, are STDs a communicable disease?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Their laboratories and providers are required to report. every
Okay, so that's why you
STD
guys
to
get
us.
that information. So that would be the scientific data that okay, for that particular situation.
And I'd like to say too, that, or to ask, in order to, so we don't have duplication, like, for example, this presentation that we're talking about, that took a lot of hours and time and money to create. When was that, or where was that presented first? To whom, I should say?
It was last April. It was created, I think, March, April, and it was presented to our previous Board of Health.
Okay, so
At a Board of Health
to
meeting.
those commissioners.
I saw it.
Okay.
And then your follow-up question should be, did that change anything?
No, well, we had approval last year to add an additional nurse just to work on sexually transmitted diseases and infections. And we had hired one, and when that nurse left, we did not get approval to refill it. So we're back to where we were.
Yeah, to be full disclosure, that nurse was approved because it was funded from outside rather than.
Correct, from the
county.
Foundational Public Health Services
Yeah.
funding.
Well,
Well, so then just a quantitative question, are STDs more than last year or less than last year?
To be honest, I wouldn't know this year's, those numbers aren't final that year.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things that go through, but I can say that they had been climbing up through the report. I think it looked
Yeah.
like 2021 was down, but we were still kind of reeling from COVID. I think lots of folks hadn't gone to the doctor like they probably would have normally. Which was,
and can I just say something about epidemiologists? I'd like to see them jump right on things like when that monkeypox came out, we needed someone to really give us correct information to either be that we should be all fearful or what group should be fearful. And it felt like it took a long time for anyone locally to really address monkeypox as not being really, I don't think, a huge issue in Cowlitz County, but I wasn't sure. And they tried to scare us to death nationally, or at least state of Washington. And I needed someone in your department to say, well, this is the facts that we know actually. And that's what's really important to me, hearing what's accurate and right away. And if that's what an epidemiologist can do on call, I'd like to see them used for that purpose personally. To clarify.
I think that probably falls with perhaps a little bit of the epidemiologist to be able to pull data perhaps about our population statistics. And then the health officer would be able to give more information about what that looks like. I think, yeah, it did. There was a lot of fear instilled, I think, nationally.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll come back to this STDs next month with.
If
with
that
the-
will fit on the agenda.
Yeah, if it'll fit
Yeah.
the agenda. Yep.
A quick question on STDs. We older folks think of STDs and somehow the name got changed to STIs. Is there,
Yeah.
what's the idea behind that?
That's a good question. And I actually had to refresh my mind because I get confused. And I think in a sexually transmitted disease, a sexually transmitted infection is what it is before it turns into a disease. And I am not a medical.
I'm
doctor.
sorry, I can't hear you there.
A sexually transmitted infection turns into a sexually transmitted disease. I think if it's more, what's the word I'm looking
Okay.
for?
Symptomatic.
Dr. Krager should be on.
He said- What did
He
he
could
say?
probably help us with that better.
All right, and my internet's a little unstable, and I apologize that I'm not there in person today. Yes, so Carol is correct. So anyone can have an infection. What makes the STD, the disease part is if you're symptomatic, if you're showing symptoms. It's kind of pedantic, but to clarify, like people can have sexually transmitted infections without symptoms. And so we still want to keep track of those. But whether it's a disease or not, just it depends on whether you have symptoms or not. But they often get used interchangeably.
I'm
That's-
sorry I asked.
That's the technical definition. Yes.
So, going on to the next month's meeting, there's a couple things that we had already just discussed with HHS, is that the school coalitions, some of the school coalitions will come to give a little presentation to us next month. And then also we'd like to see if we can ask to meet the new regional health officer. Doesn't have to be next month, but if
Are you talking about the state
the
regional
regional-
health
the
officer?
state regional health officer.
Isn't that a new position that they have that represents Cowlitz County and?
Well, they don't really represent us. It's the state regional, the regional health officers are state employees. They're kind of deputy state health officers, and they're assigned regionally, but those regions are very fluid. There's not a set, you will represent Cowlitz County, you will, they're very fluid regions. And we have not had a lot of interaction yet. I know Dr. Krager has connected with, I don't even remember his name. I was gonna say it's Jason, it's not Jason.
It's Jay Miller. Yeah.
Jay, that's right. So his name is Jay Miller, and he would be the state regional health officer. That is, I actually haven't met him. I've met him online, but I haven't met him in person.
But is there a budget for him to come and let us meet him since we're paying his wages?
Well, that would be up to his employer, which would be the state, I guess, but we could find out.
If you could reach out and tell him we'd like to meet him.
Sure, we can.
And hear what his role is in philosophy, because I understand that they will come and cover if our health officer is gone. That was my understanding. And so we would want to know who they are and what they're going to do for us personally, in my opinion.
Yeah, they will only come cover if we ask, and sometimes that is a double-edged sword. We may not want the state coming and covering for our local health officer, depends. But I can reach out and we can find out if he's able to come.
Thank you.
I'd appreciate it.
The danger we have is, I think the consensus I have is that we really wanted to incorporate all the thoughts we had or questions into this STD presentation, and I don't want to shortchange that. And when you're bringing in a luminary from outside, it may command the whole meeting. And again, looking at it as an empiricist of value is exactly what Mary Jane said. Let's get on the same page on all the problems. And the regional health officer, it's a nice thing to know him and all that, but we've got what I would call urgent stuff on the plate.
Oh, well, okay. I am concerned about having a regional health officer. I never understood the purpose and I'm still not clear. And so I just would personally like to see him, see if he exists. And if he does have to cover for us, I'd like to hear what he thinks, because he might be making some pretty critical short-term decisions.
I agree with you. I was just saying, I expect this STD discussion to
Right.
be
Not a
a
priority.
half hour, let's say.
Oh, okay.
And if the gentleman wants a half hour to talk about stuff, I'm just saying, you got to figure out a schedule at a time. Maybe we go longer than an hour. That's okay with me. I'm just
okay.
saying, don't shortchange that presentation.
I'm sorry. I couldn't hear very well.
Oh, that's good advice.
What?
That's,
What are the school coalitions?
There's 3 different youth prevention coalitions that ESD 112 coordinates and helps work with. There's
Wait a
one-
minute, you just said youth prevention?
Mhm.
That's birth control?
No.
What are we talking about?
Different topic. Drug and alcohol prevention.
So somewhere along the way, that's been decided that drugs and alcohol use ranks right up there as important.
So there
Health
was,
concerns.
this board had some discussion, a few meetings back about the Healthy Youth Survey data and schools and what's going on in schools. And so as an opportunity to hear more and learn more, the idea came up to invite the youth prevention coalitions who work in our community to come in and kind of share about the work they're doing in the schools. So there's one that's geared towards Castle Rock, one in Longview, one in Kelso. So there's a representative scheduled to come for the August Board of Health meeting to share that information.
And will they be able to share with us their successes or just the programs that they've done? If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, we can ask them what information they have available. I think they'll give an overview. I'm not sure what you've discussed with them of the programs they do and they've implemented in the schools and how they work with youth. And they're part of that. There's a youth prevention summit countywide every year that I know, I think a couple members of the Board of Health.
The Youth
attended.
Substance Abuse Coalitions. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not youth prevention.
Youth prevention.
That's a good one.
I mean, it does raise the interesting issue is we have been throwing money at the Castle Rock program that I know of as long as I've been on the commission. And they're enthusiastic. I've never seen any data that suggests that alcohol and tobacco use has gone down in Castle Rock. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. Maybe we just spend that much money because it makes us feel good that we've addressed the problem by throwing money at it.
When
And I think we've had that kind of discussion before. How do we know if these social service programs achieve anything other than employing the consultant or whoever writes the reports
Yeah.
and going through the motion?
The county used to be the pass-through entity for that funding that was for the Castle Rock Care Coalition. The county has not been the pass-through entity for that funding, I think, since that's been a number of years now. So all of that funding transitioned. So it now is, the pass-through entity is ESD 112 now.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the county's not been involved in that funding for a number of years.
I think Dennis makes a good point, and I would expect that with a program and programming, ESD would require that they keep data in terms of who they see, how many kids they see, what their success rates are, kind of follow up on that. So I would expect that would be part of their presentation.
In the big picture and something like that always is the normalization. Let's say it would be stunning and excellent if Castle Rock showed a great reduction while other municipalities who didn't follow the same program showed they were stayed the same or increased. And then you'd have to dig into that more. But and then state-wise, like the use of tobacco, I'm pretty sure has gone way down. But what has come in its place is vaping. And anyhow.
Well, I have joined the Castle Rock Coalition, so I'm going to start learning about what they do. And I can report that to you. Maybe.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to open it up for public discussion.
Are you going to skip over the opioid?
Well, I was thinking we could come back to that
Okay.
if we had time. If anybody has any public comment period comments.
Well, yeah, while she's coming up, I know we did sign the agreements to set up the oversight committees for the opioid settlements.
Right.
So we've gotten that far along on,
Okay.
but I don't think we're spending any of the money yet.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering, this information, shouldn't a lot of this information already be with doctors? From all the time before, seems like they'd already have all this information. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that some of the doctors get to see some of the presentations that you've given, at least our health officers.
I don't know if I understand the question.
It's just that the doctors see this information on the presentations, I think.
Is there a mechanism for the physicians? They have a group that meets, I think still, and do they ever get presentations about this kind of thing that we're talking about today? That's data.
Do they collect data, I guess? Do they
Yeah.
tick
Well,
off, we got?
When it
3
comes to like
STDs.
the STDs and STIs, they have to report those to us. So they tell us when they have who and what and ages and those types of things. As far as like the presentations that we do to this group, they're available like online and on our webpage and things. We don't necessarily give them the same information. However, I think I had mentioned that one of the items that Dr. Kreger has been working on is really getting connected better with Kaiser and Peace Health and perhaps, visiting them and doing grand rounds and presentations with physicians, especially about things that they may not be as familiar with, like tuberculosis, which is a really big deal.
I would add that we have done provider alerts that go out to all providers, and specifically around STDs and syphilis. So that's one thing where we have done some proactive education, but we do want to do more.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Good morning, Commissioner members, Board of Health. I'm Randall Rathbun. I'm a retired aerospace engineer. I've also worked with mathematics. I'm a current research mathematician. I come to here, I'm nervous this morning because we're talking about a serious topic, and I want to be careful in the information that I present to all of you. About 2 years ago, we had flash curricula discussed in the Battleground School District. I took it upon myself to carefully analyze lesson 12, which dealt with condom usage. I did carefully do a review of that using both the federal standards and the Washington state standards to see if that material would actually present information to the kids to make a qualified decision. It was my own personal judgment that the material did not meet those standards. I found out, for example, on the lead page in the flash curricula, that the one key medical reference they were relying upon to show 100% safety actually was a misquote from the New England Journal of Medicine. There was not 124 people in that study, it was actually 308 people in that study. Also found that about half of those people also quit that study. And furthermore, the study was not a typical standard population sample, okay? One of the couples involved had HIV, one did not. I was puzzled by that and thought, why are we only quoting one study? So I reached out across the United States, contacted some of the medical organizations. I did contact the AAPS. Dr. Michelle Cortella was the president at that time. I did speak with her personally and asked her if she could provide me with factual information about condoms. She referred me over to Dr. Fitch and his group out of Texas, Houston, Texas. And they were happy to talk with me. I did talk with the Institute of Medical Institute of Sexual Health. And they did provide me with Dr. Fitch's bibliography since the NIH 2000 conference by 4 federal agencies on condom effectiveness. Dr. Fitch had kept a very careful bibliography, and I had that information passed to me. I subsequently commented to the Battleground School Board president about the inadequacies in that flash lesson. And he was very busy at the time, but actually did read my critique and agreed with it. And he did request the curriculum advisors in that district to work to correct the deficiencies in that lesson. Unfortunately, that correction never occurred, but he did give me an astonishing task. One week, he said, "What is your answer?" So I did reach out to 3 or 4 doctors groups and said, look, this is the predicament I'm in right now. The president is asking a very serious question, and he wants to know, what is your answer? And I actually found out that we were actually even missing more of this story than I first realized. I want to read off something here that I found out on my own research. Did you know HPV is the most commonly sexually transmitted disease in the US? But did you know that HPV 16 is transmitted through oral sex? And there was not one word about the risk to humans by engaging in oral sex. And I went over to the foundation there that keeps statistics on this. And they quite frankly had an alarming webpage that said STDs passed by oral sex is completely out of control. And they also indicated that the HPV 16 infection, that time of discovery was way too late, and it had a 50% fatality rate. And the insurance companies, furthermore, would not even cover this. It was a new disease, so to speak, on the horizon. So insurance companies were not taking care of that. To me, that was a tragedy. So also, I found out that the use of condoms for anal sex was really dubious at best. I understand the FDA just recently certified that, but engaging in that is very risky behavior. And one of our US surgeons, Dr. Coop, did mention that that was unacceptable. The last thing here is vaginal sex and condoms. The young women in particular are at risk. The epithelial cell layer in their uterus is 1 cell thick on the average, and it has to mature up to about 25 to 40 cells thick. I'm not a medical doctor myself, so I can't give you all the details on this. I did have to ask the doctors what is going on here. And they said that engaging in young women engaging in this activity are particularly susceptible to contracting STDs. And finally, the Daily Mirror 2 days ago published an article worldwide about the explosion of STDs in America. And they quoted the Houston area that the syphilis had increased over 200%. It's sad. Condoms do not prevent syphilis because the syphilis contact area can be outside of the genital organs, and people can still contract it by touch. It's transmitted that way. And as I hear, that is true about chlamydia too. So I don't want to depress you all, but I think it's important if we instruct our kids about sexual activity that they need to be given all the facts. And I particularly make a plea this morning that we need to look into this area of oral sex and sexual transmitted diseases much more than we're currently doing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Oh, one question for you. Did you say that the battleground schools are still telling kids that condoms are 100% effective?
I don't quite know. I'm not sure about that. I have to check.
But they were at one point, because I think everybody knows that they're not 100% effective. In fact, I asked our health officer, Dr. Krager, and I think he said around 90%. So if they're instructing that it's fully safe, that kind of coincides with the STD, the report.
But I think you want to be sure what you mean by safe. Safe for pregnancy or safe for disease is probably two different things.
Probably are two different numbers. I don't think I asked Dr. Krager that question, but definitely not
That is
100%. Yeah.
That's correct. It depends on the.
Thank you.
I hate I don't want to sound ignorant, but HPV 16, you're being told that there's a 50%, I mean, 1 out of 2 people, this is a fatality rate. 50% of the people that get this HPV 16
Say again.
die. This HPV 16, yeah, they're telling you it's a 50% fatality rate?
Yeah, that's what I saw
Okay.
on their
And-
website.
Educate me, what is HPV 16?
They said there were several family of the HPV and
Okay.
some were actually currently being discovered risk wise, and they cited HPV 16 in particular as the real killer.
Can Dr. Krager, if he's there, can he say what that word HPV stands for?
I apologize. I know. HPV is human papillomavirus. It is a sexually transmitted disease. It is very common. I wonder if the 50% fatality rate, HPV causes certain types of cancer, but not all the time. It's actually pretty rare. But I wonder if that's where that number is coming from, but I can get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much.
I want to submit that. Can I submit this to the panel?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Heine-Withy, and I am with the Family Policy Institute of Washington. Education awareness is my, I guess, my expertise. And just reiterating a little of what Mr. Rathbun testified in. The flash curriculum that we are talking about is used, it's probably the most commonly used sex ed curriculum across the state of Washington. I know that is being used in the Castle Rock School District. I am assuming the other school districts in Cowlitz County are also using it. I did a FOIA request with the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. Castle Rock was the only school district that had reported the sex ed curriculum that they are using. I'm hoping to get some updated data on reporting on what schools are using before the start of this next school year. What the flash curriculum has done is it has made, its goal is for condom use to be seen in a positive aspect by students. Therefore, it has given students information that leads them to believe that condoms are 100% effective. That's why the study that Mr. Rathbun presented, the way it is shown in the curriculum, it gives all of the information from this study that supports the creators of Flash. It supports their position of condoms are a good thing. Condom use is effective at preventing STDs and pregnancy, which in some aspects, yes, they are, but they're not 100% effective. They don't tell students that. There are no failure rates in any of the flash curriculum. This is both middle school and high school that they're showing this to kids. And if we want our students making informed decisions, they need all the information. And this curriculum that is being taught to our kids now in sex ed is not giving them all of the information they need. I want to talk a little bit about a subject that I know has been brought up at past meetings, and that is about the teachings of gender identity that is being done in our schools in sex ed and through the flash curriculum. In the first page of what I gave to you, that is actually from the curriculum that is being taught. And at the bottom, it says assigned sex. When a baby is born, the doctor usually says the baby is a male or female, depending on the appearance of the baby's genitals. This is the baby's assigned sex. And this is different than what we have taught to kids since they've been teaching kids about reproduction and fetal development. Sex is not assigned at birth. It is determined at conception, and then it is recognized at birth and even before. So why is this important? This is where it leads. I just want to give a little bit of facts here about biology. So there are over 6,400 genetic differences between men and women, including lung capacity, bone density, tendon and ligament strength, blood volume, muscle mass, pelvic structure. It goes on and on and on. There is absolutely no proof that kids know their gender identity before kindergarten, as is stated in the flash curriculum. On the second page here, it is also from the curriculum. It states, gender identity is a deep feeling people have about whether they are a guy, a girl, both, neither, somewhere in between. People often know their gender identity when they are very little, before they start kindergarten. Although everyone is different, some people will know when they are younger or older. There is no proof of this. There's no proof that if a 5-year-old decides that they're the opposite gender, that they will continue to believe that through adolescence and into adulthood. In fact, I am going to give you some facts about gender identity that we don't hear much. And these are also listed in the information I gave you. So today, 1 in 4 students identify as LGBT, and about 20% of Gen Z identify as transgender. That's 6 times the rate of Gen X, which suggests that this is not natural, but it is a social contagion. About 75% of transgender youth have a comorbid disorder such as anxiety and depression. Kids on the autism spectrum are especially susceptible to gender suggestions. But 80 to 95% of transgender youth will come to identify with their biological sex by adulthood if they simply are allowed to go through natural puberty. There are studies from Sweden where transgender identities have been accepted for years that show the suicide rate for transgender individuals does not go down after surgery. And we always hear that we must affirm students who identify as the opposite gender, or else they will commit suicide. We don't know that they are committing suicide because they're not being affirmed. In fact, the evidence shows the opposite, because in countries such as the Netherlands and Sweden, where they have been affirming transgender individuals for many, many years, the suicide rate is still high. The suicide rate is high in San Francisco, where transgender individuals are affirmed, and it's the norm. And if this was true, then why is it that when I was a young person, when any of you were teenagers, that we didn't have mass suicides of teens and young people who were transgender, but were suffering from depression because they weren't being affirmed? That didn't happen. You would think that if they commit suicide because they're not being affirmed, well, back in the 80s, when I was a teenager, we were not affirming transgender individuals like today. There would have been mass suicides of young people. There were not. Several European countries have stopped or restricted gender treatments for youth. England's largest gender clinic for youth, Tavistock, closed because they were sued by a young woman who was pushed into transition. Most teens who start on gender affirming drugs continue on to have surgery. The rates of detransitioners is difficult to tell because there are no good tracking systems for people who are detransitioning. Also, detransitioners face heavy harassment from the transgender community, so a lot of times they want to keep it quiet. Hormone blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgery, they all have severe side effects. This includes a loss of bone density, cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, loss of sexual function, sterility. They make a person a medical patient for life. They can shorten their lifespan. These side effects are not reversible. I know we hear a lot of times that putting a child on a hormone blocker is just a pause. The longer they are on that hormone blocker, the more they are at risk of the side effects not reversing. And the natural transition of a hormone blocker is to cross-sex hormones and surgery. Our schools have created a gender superhighway for students towards transition. They have gender identity lessons in sex ed. Some schools are starting this as early as kindergarten. Now, it's not statewide, but the option is there and the ability is there to start students on gender lessons earlier and earlier. We have books in the libraries about gender. We have created a gender affirming environment in the public schools. There are GSA clubs, pride celebrations, and school counselors, according to their standards, must be gender affirming. So this all starts with the false statement that sex is assigned at birth. We know that's not true. It's not biologically true. We should not be telling kids this because it leads them down this road. If we tell a student, hey, their sex is assigned at birth, guess what? It's changeable. They're given the idea that they can change it. And we know that's not true. No amount of hormones or surgery is ever going to change a boy into a girl and a girl into a boy. And as we see, and evidence shows, the suicide rate for youth who are transitioned is very high. I have a lot of information here that I will leave you to go through. Not only this gender lesson from the high school flash curriculum, which is also similar to the middle school curriculum, but then I have information on transgender intervention, how it harms students, and statistics on transgender individuals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Question?
Yes.
It's more of a sequitur to follow the money. What is the driver behind the drivers to sway people into the current view that you've outlined as being?
I think you have a very good point there about the money. Because when you transition a youth, you're talking about a medical patient for life. We're talking, and the estimates have been around $1 million a person over their lifetime. Even if they detransition because they have side effects from these drugs and surgeries that they don't go away, they're still going to be a medical patient for life. I think it was in Nashville, Tennessee last year, a hospital that was performing gender surgeries on youth. At one of their conferences, one of the doctors stood up and pointed out that performing gender treatments and gender surgeries is basically a cash cow for the hospital. That's a lot of money. Planned Parenthood is now prescribing cross-sex hormones to youth. The CDC has been involved in creating sex ed curriculums that do focus on gender. So there's a lot of money to be made in this industry, if you'd like to call it that.
That's a pretty ugly story. With respect to categories, is there a difference between, there clearly is a difference, but if you'll bear with me a little bit, if a 35-year-old person decides that they want to try the other side of the aisle, is that any different than a 5-year-old how do you?
I
maybe
think
help
I
us.
see where you're getting at.
Yeah.
If a child is started on hormone blockers before they have gone through puberty, the longer they're on those hormone blockers, they miss that window for going through puberty. So you put a child on those hormone blockers at the age where they would start entering into puberty when they're prepubescent. And they don't go through that natural puberty. If they are on those blockers until past that age where they go through puberty, 15, 16, and they come off of them, their body doesn't go through puberty. They've missed that window. So you end up with a young man who still looks like a little boy, still has the genitalia of a little boy. Now, if this young man continues on to have surgery to become a woman, one of the things that they need for creating a neovagina is the tissue that comes from his sexual organs. Well, there's not enough tissue there to form that neovagina. So he is susceptible to vaginal tearing, bleeding, all sorts of complications. And if you have heard of the individual Jazz Jennings, he went through hormone blockers before puberty and went through these surgeries. He has had complication after complication after complication because there is not enough tissue there to form those sexual organs.
I appreciate that. It was an ill-formed question. I was trying to figure out, we all know about Caitlyn Jenner, right?
Yes.
Is there a distinction? Paradoxically, we expect 18-year-olds to make wise decisions on the battlefield, but we don't expect them to make wise decisions in many other circumstances. And I scratch my head. It's really But, so I'm taking an older person who has accomplished a lot in life, like that person. Would you think that's a bad thing that individual did?
I think, well, I know when you are older, your brain has fully developed. You have the ability to reason, to weigh the pros and cons, and to make a more rational decision than when you are a young person. A person's brain doesn't fully develop until around age 25.
Right, so you would
That-
allow, you would say that Caitlyn Jenner's decision was a personal decision. You may not agree with it, but it's acceptable.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Now, for a young person, the prefrontal cortex is the last thing to develop, and I'm assuming most of you or all of you would know this. That's a part of your brain that that deals with reasoning, pros and cons. This is why we see teenagers making such boneheaded decisions. Sometimes they do things that we just don't understand. Teenagers are impulsive, they're emotional, they think that they are the king of the world, that they are never going to die. Their brain isn't fully developed to be able to really weigh out the pros and the cons and be able to look at these decisions rationally, not like a grown adult. That's why we are seeing quite a few young adults who made this decision as a teenager and now as a young adult are going, what in the world did I just do? And are showing regret. You've got young women who have receding hairlines and a voice like a man. That doesn't come back if they decide to detransition. Men who have removed their genitals, they don't have the ability to have normal sexual function. Neither do the women. They are sterile. The combination of the hormone blockers, cross-sex hormones, basically chemically castrates these children. And these youth, if they go through with surgery, they're physically castrated. The reproductive organs are removed. And these, at the time they're making this decision, they don't understand that when they're an adult, they may want to have children. They are making these decisions before they have even many times had sex. They don't know what having a healthy sexual life or sexual, what a healthy physical life is like. They don't know the ramifications of healthy sexual function is for their life. So they're making this decision based on emotion, based on impulse. Not only are they learning these things in their sex ed class, but it's being reinforced by elements in our society from social media, influencers on TikTok, commercials, the movies, trying to normalize transgender lifestyles, GSA clubs, counselors, pride events, teachers who are affirming and stating that this is an affirming classroom. It's a safe and supportive environment. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have safe and supportive environments at school, but this should go across the board for all students. And safe and supportive does not always mean affirming whatever a child is feeling, because we know kids will feel things at times that is destructive, or they need to be educated and they need to be guided.
Thank you for your testimony.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
Jennifer, can you talk about your professional educational background? for us?
Well, I have a bachelor's degree. I'm not a medical professional, but what I am is a mom who became concerned about this 5 years ago. And for the last 5 years, I have been poring over data and studies and read curriculum and attended board meetings, talked with professionals, politicians, school board directors, teachers, principals. I have looked at many of the curriculum that have been approved by the OSPI, the Superintendent of Public Instruction. I own the entire Flash curriculum, plus other curriculums that have been approved by the state of Washington. I have shared my findings, and I probably have studied this harder than anything I ever studied when I was in high school or college.
Thank you. Again, that's,
I could go on for a bit, but if
let me
somebody
just
else-
say one thing. Sorry if we're going a little longer, since all the commissioners are here and or Lindy or Mary Jane, does anybody have a problem with us going a little long?
How much longer?
Just, I mean, we're already a little late.
Really.
Okay, go ahead.
There was one comment overall, and then the reaction, he's a question. My first class in graduate school, the professor came in, there were half a dozen of us in the classroom. He stood over the podium, looked at us, and he said, "Do you know why you're here?" And we looked at him and we didn't know, we looked at each other, we didn't know what he was asking. He said, "I'll tell you. The reason is you're not good enough to succeed without a PhD." He was our professor. He did not have a PhD. So anyhow, I just thought I'm very seldom. Okay, I want to thank you for you and Mr. Rathbone. I do have a specific question of, we often don't get people coming to us with such complete analyses. How is it you come here today? Who put you up to it? If is the blunt way of asking.
I'm here because I talk with parents all over the state. And I have had parents come to me saying, my child was just fine. And now they are coming home and saying that they are the opposite gender. I don't know where this came from. I've talked with the school and the school has said, "I'm sorry, but we affirm these children's genders." When children come into school and say, I'm identify as the opposite gender, we affirm that. And I have heard horror stories.
So I'm being much more narrow and pointed in my question. Very often people don't know that we have open mics or this or that kind of thing. Why do you come here today as opposed to next week or last year or any of those things?
Well,
How did you learn about this meeting?
I learned about it.
I told her.
Okay, thank you. That's all I'm looking for. How
Yeah,
do you?
she told me and she said, "Listen into the board meetings." I did. And I am willing to go and speak with anybody who is willing to listen.
Excellent. Then one final, truly final question. Is there one specific thing you would like us to do that you feel is within our purview as the Board of Health?
I would like the Board of Health to approach the districts in Cowlitz County and say, this has been brought to our attention. This is a concern because you are not giving students unbiased information. We need to look into your curriculum further as to what you're teaching because we have reason to believe information you are giving to students is not meant to be honest or to keep them healthy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
you.
that's good questions to ask.
Thank you, Tom.
Does anybody have any more comments?
Any public interested in responding?
Yeah. I appreciate you guys coming and sharing this. I don't even know how to say this. This whole kind of stuff makes me sick.
I would say one thing, comment that Aaron, that you talked about the money, and I believe and follow the money. And I have read, and I have friends in California, but I've read some articles that there are in some of the states that are banning gender changing, that California is advertising to these kids and having them come out to California, paid, their trip is paid for, they stay in California for a few months, I believe, to get the process done. And California is paying this without their parents' knowledge. And in order to advertise and move kids into California for a few months away from their parents, that must take a lot of money. And I wonder, where's that money coming from? Somebody's going to be paying for it.
If I could just respond to that, here in the state of Washington, they just passed law 5599 was the bill. We actually tried to get enough signatures on a referendum to get it on the ballot in November. We were about 5,000 short. But this law says that runaways, when they come into state custody, if this runaway is seeking gender affirming care or an abortion, the state won't contact the parents to say, we know where your child is.
Yeah.
And instead we'll get them that care that they're looking for. This includes children who are brought from out of state. They also passed a law this past session that says the state of Washington will not recognize any sort of judgment from out of state that deals with gender affirming care. So for example, if you have a couple from out of state, say Idaho, they're divorced, they have a child that wants to go through gender transition. One parent says, yes, I support that. The other parent doesn't. And they have a court order that says, no, you cannot transition your child. Well, that parent that supports the transition can take their child into Washington state for that transition. If that other parent comes into Washington state and says, we have a court order, the state of Washington will say, we don't recognize that court order.
Wow.
Well, and I'm curious about the health department's stand on the transgender affirming. And I mean, I haven't heard too much from the health department, Dr. Krager, as to some of those issues that Jennifer just described as being side effects of the transitioning. And so I am curious about the position of CDC and our local health department. Personally, I'd like to know.
Well, I will say, this is not a topic that we do a lot of work around. This is I think there's a little bit of a mix, maybe not a mix up, but sometimes like healthcare and public health. Obviously there's a lot of overlap, but this is an issue that, you know, we leave to healthcare providers. We do provide, you know, education around STIs. That's absolutely something that we do. You know, mental health in youth. We've talked about some of the data that we have around that. That's kind of the extent of the work that we do. So I'm not sure what we would contribute, but I'm happy to talk about it further.
Well, I am curious if there is an increased suicide rate among our transgenders changing students or whatever you call them.
That is not data that I'm aware that we have.
That's not your, your data does
Well,
not
I'm
show
not
that.
sure that we have, I'm not sure that we have that level of specificity in our data for
Okay.
Cowlitz County. I know that there is data, more like national studies that show things like that, but I'd have to, yeah, I'm not sure about the
Maybe we
specificity
can,
of data.
maybe we can include that in the survey as a category of potential suicide.
That's
cause.
probably a discussion more appropriate with the coroner who does keep statistics on
Oh,
suicide.
good question. That'd be
And,
good. Yeah, thank you.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the interesting
I will
challenge, the interesting challenge that we have as a county health board is the extent to which we have any authority to regulate lesson plans that are approved by separately elected school boards,
Mm,
as well as the state legislature.
okay.
One of the more frustrating things as a county commissioner is learning how limited our authority is. It's pretty specific. And I don't think there's a state law that gives us a grant of authority to either review lessons prepared by school boards, or the authority to even intervene. But certainly, the public knowledge and the discussion that's legitimate. It's just, I'm not sure we're the ones to
Well,
do what
being
we're
being a new concept of Board of Health, maybe there's different ideas that can be introduced into that position of Board of Health with lay people. I wonder if some things can be changed.
Well, and if it's a health issue, and it's clearly a health issue, it can be discussed, but I think you're probably right, may not have authority over the curriculum.
Or is it a health issue in Cowlitz County? We don't have the data on that.
Some of the, yeah, in Castle Rock, they're teaching the Flash curriculum.
Well,
But is it a health problem? You're talking about an educational issue,
Yeah.
which is legitimate. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
dismissing that at all, but
here's the thing, Commissioner Roberts totally right. We don't have authority as commissioners to tell schools what to do, but as a citizen of Castle Rock, I guarantee you, I'll stand up at that room and I'll talk to them about this. I absolutely guarantee you. When I talked to them about 5599, I got this blank look like they all didn't know what I was talking about. And that's crap. They should all know what's going on.
Yeah.
So as a citizen of that community, and even though I don't have kids in the school, it concerns me. I promise you, your request of us will be fulfilled in Castle Rock.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
If anybody has any more comments, questions? Carol, did you want to, I saw you reaching for it.
No, I was just, if we were moving on to, I was going.
Okay.
I'll just make this quick. I appreciate so much, Lindy, that you invited Jennifer to come and address all of you. This is an important topic that many parents and grandparents are dealing with their own children in the Kelso School District, Longview, Castle Rock, everywhere. So this education that has been brought forward to us is vitally important to all of us. So I really appreciate and thank you, Jennifer, for sharing all this information and all the work you put into presenting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Arden, did you have any further comments or questions, or should we wrap it up?
My only comments and apology, I've
We were
had some
talking
issues I had to
behind
take
your
care
back,
of.
that's all.
I'm sorry.
We were talking behind your back while you were gone.
Well, it was partly true.
Okay, well, with that,
Quick question. So any update on the advisory committee?
no update.
Thank you.
Oh, I do want to ask though, from that last meeting, that you were going to discuss how topics were going to be brought for the agenda. And there was nothing decided according to the.
Oh, no, we've added, if you have any topics, same with the staff, anybody has a topic, please submit them to me by email. and
Okay.
We'll put it on there.
Yeah, I had just suggested a formalized process so that.
She
everybody could
suggested
be looped in.
formalized.
But that didn't go anywhere, as you can see from the minutes.
Is that okay?
And that wasn't my preference, but
Oh.
but the board voted.
Oh.
So on topic of the agenda, we kind of wanted to circle back on August's agenda. We talked about 4 or 5 different things. I don't think we're going to do them all in one meeting, or maybe we are. But we just need some clear direction on what you would like from us for the next meeting. We talked about, we already have the Youth Prevention Coalition scheduled to come to the August meeting to present. So we do have that already arranged with the ESD. We talked about 1/10 of 1%, an overview. We talked about a deeper dive. No, that's a bad way to put it. More discussion about STDs. And then we also talked about the state regional health officers. So unless I missed anything, but those are the ones I want to hone in on what the board would like from us. Opioids, because we
Opioids
didn't
too.
get to that.
I would
yeah.
say the regional health officer, we can hold that one off for a little bit
Yeah.
because it's just a new topic.
Bumping that off another month.
That we discussed earlier today here that we're gonna push that off.
But into September instead of August, because it sounds like the August agenda is pretty full already. Or put it on at the very end if there's time. And if not, then bump it to September.
We are getting
health-
close to the,
Health tax?
I don't know, do we have till the end of the year to make that decision?
Think so.
Yeah.
Health
Okay.
tax.
Okay, well, with that, I will get back to you, Carol, and we'll come up with an agenda because there's a lot of topics to cover and we're going late and
Yes.
so yeah, we have to,
Okay. Yeah,
Trim
the
it
sooner
down.
we know, the better, so we can. prepare.
I hear you and sorry about all the extra work. It looks like it's getting piled on. So with that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 11:46. Thank you for coming.